So in this video, I'm going to show you how I go about putting together an assembly in Wunderbuild, and then how I link that assembly to a costing to make your life easier when you're doing an estimate. And I'll do an example of how I calculate architraves for a project. Hey, my name's Theo Manifavas. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a former builder. I manage hundreds of projects and now I run Consistemize, where I help builders set up Wunderbuild and their business systems. So keep watching and you'll find out exactly what you need to do for assemblies and adding them to your costing in this video. Okay, so we're in the assembly section in Wunderbuild. So if you go to settings, assembly list, you'll get a whole heap of the assemblies that you've created. And if you want to create an assembly, you just click this button where it says add assembly. So assemblies, other softwares call them recipes, so they're one of the same. So all we're trying to do is trying to put together a formula that's going to make it easier when we're trying to work out quantities in a project. And we generate those quantities from the takeoff function in Wunderbuild. So I'll go through my process of how I go about that, and I'll do an example for architraves, and just follow along and hopefully it makes sense how I've worked it out. So the first thing I do is, like I said, I'll click in, I'll do add an assembly. So what I'm essentially doing is thinking through, okay, well, how am I going to use the takeoff feature in Wunderbuild to then generate the numbers I need for that assembly. So for architraves, for example, I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got all these door openings, as you can see on the screen here, which I've done the takeoff for. So obviously from the door openings, from a header height perspective, or header width I should say, I'm going to be able to get my linear meters of architrave that I need for the header. So that first calculation is pretty easy, where I'm just doing a measurement of the opening widths of each opening in the home. And then what I'll do then is, as I'm doing this and thinking it through, I'll also put it together in a spreadsheet. And the reason I do that is because it gives me clarity when I'm working through trying to put together this assembly, and putting in the assembly quantity of how it's going to calculate. And yeah, it just makes it a lot easier to see, well, how I've worked it out in a spreadsheet, and then putting those figures into Wunderbuild to generate a formula or assembly that makes sense. So to use this first example, you can see here I've got total linear meters of door openings. I've got a node there, measure both sides of door, 33.48. So that then links back to this takeoff. You can see the total takeoff quantity there is 33.48 linear meters based on me doing this takeoff on this plan. So going back to this spreadsheet now, I'm just doing a calculation here, and this one probably doesn't have too much to do with the total linear meters, but I've just written out here. So for every 1 linear meter of door opening, I'm going to need 0.1852 lengths of 5.4 meter architrave. So now I didn't just come up with that number, so that's just a formula. So all I've done is 1 divided by 5.4 being the length of this architrave. So I know that for every meter of door opening, this is how much length of 5.4 meter architrave I'm going to need. And the reason I do that is because, and why this number is important, is because this is the number I'm going to put into Wunderbuild's assembly to generate my total lengths of this 5.4 meter architrave that I need. So if I go back now to Wunderbuild and I go to that first assembly, you can see here I've titled it Architraves header piece, excluding mitres, because we're going to work that out separately in another assembly calculation. And the total, and I'll start again. So the unit of measure we're working out for this one is in linear meters, which comes as a standard unit of measure in Wunderbuild. And then you can see here I've got as a quantity this 0.1852, so I'll just zoom in there. So this is the number I've generated from my spreadsheet. So again, I'm just referring back to the spreadsheet to give me clarity, and I know that for this header assembly, this is the number I'm going to put in the assembly section here to work out how many pieces of 5.4 metre length architrave pieces I'm going to need when I'm calculating the header for our architrave calculation in this example. So that's the first one. So then let's go to the second item, which is now the mitre. So the mitre corners of the architrave. So how I've worked this one out, and again I'll go back to my spreadsheet here, and I'll go over to the next tab, is that what I'm saying is that, okay, I've got 31 door openings on this project, so front and back door openings. So again, I'll jump back to Wunderbuild now, and I'll look at my takeoff, and you can see I've done a takeoff for door openings here, and I've just gone around on the plan and I'm just clicking wherever I see a door opening front and back, and if it's a linen or robe, obviously there's only an architrave to the front, but for most cases there's an architrave front and back. And yeah, in this, where I've got wet areas, for example, here I've only allowed for the front side and not the rear. But what I'm trying to do again is I want to know how many door openings I've got on the project, total front and back. And then again, going back to my spreadsheet here, I'm saying, okay, well if I've got 31 door openings, and I know for each opening I need to allow 0.14 or 140 mil for that mitre either side of the opening, 70 mil either side, then I know for, if I've got those 31 openings multiplied by that 140 mil, that's my total there. So that's the total length of architrave I need. So obviously in this instance it's less than a piece. But again, what I'm trying to do is work that back to a figure that I can then input into Wunderbuild and use going forward, so I don't have to do this calculation again. So all I'm doing here is saying 0.14, which is for each opening, divided by that length of architrave, 5.4 metres, gives me 0.0259 for each opening that I input into my my takeoff and my costing. So if I go now to, actually I won't go to the costing, I'll just show you the final one, calculation in my spreadsheet here, which is the architrave legs, or the sides of the door opening. So again, I'm thinking, okay, well, what do I need to work out from a takeoff perspective in order to get that calculation that I need? So and what's going to minimize the amount of takeoffs I need to do on the plan in order to get the calcs that I need as an assembly to give me a total quantity of 5.4 metre architrave pieces. So I've got, again, 31, we know that's how many openings there is. I know that for each leg of architrave it's 2.11 metres for a 2040 door. So we've got 2040 is the door height, 70 mil allowance for the mitre gives you 2.11, and then times 2 for both sides of the door, left and right, gives you 4.22. So I know that's the total length required, or lineal metres I should say, of architrave for the door openings left and right. And then again, I'm just bringing that calculation back to a figure that relates to this 5.4 metre length of architrave that we're going to need to order. So again, if I do 4.22 being for each door opening here, as shown, divided by 5.4 for that length of architrave, gives me 0.7815 as a quantity I need for each door opening. So going back to the assembly now in Wunderbuild, you can see that's where I've input that. So for my assembly called architrave legs, 2040 doors with 100mm architrave, I know for each opening, so this quantity here, I'm going to need 0.7815 of this 5.4 meter length of architrave. And just jumping back, so before for that header it was 0.0259 for each opening, and that's 0.259 was based on each for the opening based on that 5.4 meter architrave length, which I'd worked out here from my spreadsheet again. So that's the spreadsheet, and that's why I sort of use it, just to give me clarity, so I know when I get to putting together my assembly in Wunderbuild, I know how I've got into this figure. I'll save that spreadsheet somewhere in case I need to refer back. But that's my calculation of how I get to the quantity for the architrave 5.4 meter length in this instance. So now that we've got our assembly, what we can do is we can now call up that assembly from the costing. So I'll show you in this example here. So I'll just hit update there, and then I'll go back in. So this is just an example costing, so there's not too much in it, and I've just added in a category called fixed material, and within that I've started adding in those assemblies. So what you can do is when you go to add a costing line item, what you can do is actually add or call up an assembly like I've done here. So in this example, I've called up that assembly, and how you do that is if you click add item and I start typing, it'll come up with all the assemblies that I've got in the system. You can see here in blue, so wherever it comes up in blue and it notes assembly, they're the assemblies you can call up in the costing. And what I've done in this example is I've called up these assemblies that I've created here, which we just went through. I've called them up under this category for my architrave material. You can see here now, if I click this, there's the assembly. I've just put in a cost here as well of $15 for each 5.4 meter length. And where the magic happens now to make your life easier is that what you can do is you can call up from your costing those takeoff items that you've done, which I showed you before. You can call them up in your costing, and when you do, you'll see this little right angle here, and you call them up by clicking the calculator and inserting the takeoff quantity. So you can see here, here's all my takeoff items, and you can see I've already called this one up, the door architraves headers front and back. 33.48 was the total linear meters, and again that's shown here as well from my takeoff screen. So once we've got our quantities in, that price automatically calculates based on how many 5.4 meter lengths we need. So in this example, for the header piece of the architrave, we need a total of 6.36 lengths of 5.4 meter arc. For the mitre, we just need 0.8, so less than one piece. And then for the architrave legs left and right, we need 24.23 pieces at 5.4. So you can see it calculates the cost based on that 5.4 meter length, and then from here it obviously builds out your costing based on your quantities and based on the assembly and the figures you've entered in to get that assembly formula. What you can do as well is you can mark this up here. So obviously you're not going to order 6.36, you're going to round that up. So you can round up from here by, if I click calculator here, probably what you could do is just add wastage. That's what I probably do. So I just add wastage to this figure to bump up the quantities. So you can see then by adding 10% waste, it's gone to 36.83. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is when you're going to place an order, you can then round up to the next whole number. So if I just hit update here, this was in the job stage. You could create a purchase order, but we're still in the estimate stage in this example. But what you can do is, like I've done here, is you can select all of these and then hit quote items, and you can see then it makes a lot more sense when you're going to send this out for quote, or if it was at the job stage, if you're going to send out a purchase order to your supplier for Architraves in this example. And what you would do now is under quantities, because obviously you can't order these decimal places of a 5.4 metre length of arc, you just click this calculator button here, and then I do round up, hit accept. You can see it goes up to a whole number. So just round up, and then that way at least you're ordering full lengths of this architrave at 5.4 meters. So that's how we do an assembly, I guess, putting it together from the start, how I use a spreadsheet to sort of give myself clarity on what that takeoff quantity needs to be in terms of the quantity within the assembly itself, as related back to the line item that we want to get the quantity for. And that's how you add it then to a costing to make your life easier when you're pricing a job. So you can get some automation happening there with your total quantities. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, I look forward to the next video. Bye for now.